Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tigers Tonight. Your host, John Maddox, joined as always by the best co-host in all the land. We will start with our friend once again in the palatial Marley Manor. Larry Marley is at home yet again.
And probably next week too. So hey, look at this, we're on a roll. Yeah, and I was just driving over by University of Memphis the other day, and I saw the guys running around on the practice fields, and you could tell like they're getting ramped up for spring practice, getting the practice fields ready. And I have to say, I got a little excited. I got to be honest with you. I did.
Well, Brian's excited. It's cold where he is yet again. It's wintertime.
Yes, it is. It was with the wind chills like 25 up here, so not too shabby. It's a little nipples were tingling. Yeah, so yeah, not too bad up here.
Well, Jeb, I can't promise much, but all I can promise you is that we will do our very best to cheer you up tonight. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, spring practice schedule out today. Spring practice starts, I believe it is March the 25th, if I'm remembering correctly, the 19th. It's one of the
19th.
Yep,
it's the 19th.
Yeah. And that'll culminate, of course, 15 practices, one of which will culminate the week the 15 practices will culminate on the 21st of April. That'll be Friday Night Stripes back at the Liberty Bowl. Of course, there is no charge for that. And we will get to see the Tigers in action. He is excited about the spring game, and we make all of these. It's just like March Madness. We make all of these grand proclamations and prognostications based on a scrimmage. And Brian, I think while it's exciting for the spring game because it makes you feel like football, I think fans have to be careful to not take too much from what'll be a glorified scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean, I know this year is a pivotal year in the Ryan Silverfield era, so I think fans will need to, when they watch spring practice or watch the Friday Night Stripes, not to put too much emphasis on it because it's not a complete product. But still, I mean, if you see someone that shows flashes and stuff like that, I mean, you're going to get excited. I mean, as fans, I mean, it's natural. So if you see Sutton Smith, go off,
Right.
so some fans are going to be like, oh, the great, we found our next Darrell Henderson. He's going to be, he's going to have 1,200 yards this year. So it just, I don't know, just be excited, but don't be overly, don't. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, your expectations, don't let it, go way out there after the spring camp, because fall camp, will be here, and oftentimes you'll see ones that shine in spring. Some different ones will shine in the fall.
This is the perfect sentiment for the spring game. Jeb says, I like going to the spring games, watching spring games. Yeah, that to me is like the perfect sentiment, right? Because,
right,
like you said, everybody gets all excited, and you see Sutton Smith break an 80-yard run, and then you're like, whatever. Seth Hennigan, his arm strength is twice what it was last year. Well, calm down, because he's going against base defense, and it was really weird last year. I remember the spring game last year. It's like it never ended. It seemed like it just was going to go on and on because there was. The quarters, I believe, were timed, and I guess Coach Silverfield didn't like what he saw, so they stayed out there. I want to say the spring game was a little over 2 hours last year, which is kind of long for a spring football game, but I digress. any football is better than no football at all. As a reminder, real will not only cover the Tigers this year, but we've got 901 FC, we've got Memphis basketball, we got the Grizzlies. Too bad there's nothing going on with the Grizzlies right now. The show boats. We'll have full coverage of all Memphis area sports all summer long.
We always talk about the Tigers having drama, like a drama-free off season and all that. Ooh, boy.
Well, Gabe actually had a great point about Memphis basketball this year, the Tiger team. He said, this is probably the first time where we have met reasonable expectation with no drama.
Yep.
Because the basketball team has, the biggest drama has been me fighting people that hate Alex Lomax for some strange reason. That's been the drama, and me fighting too. I angered both the Houston's fans this week on Twitter as well. So,
I'm going to speak to that real fast. Look, God bless you guys, Houston, Cincinnati. Good luck to you. Whatever, you're about to get your ass kicked. But regardless of all that, I'll simply say this: we have been a good foil for each other, and you're going to miss. You can kick us on the way out all you want, but you're really going to miss Memphis, and we're going to miss you. And I mean that sincerely, because there's nothing better than having a team you hate. Nothing, and nothing makes a season more fun than having a team you hate. And if you don't believe that, you watch what happens when you don't. And I'll just say it like this: I understand taking the money, you got to do that, but boy, oh boy, they're going to miss us because they hate us that bad. And the fact that, how we know this? Because they argued with somebody they don't freaking know on Twitter for like 3 hours the other night.
For a joke.
And
for those that missed it, I said Memphis versus Houston sold out faster than Houston trying to get into the Big 12.
Right.
It was a joke, people, but it was absolutely true. Like, I had articles to back it up, but yeah, their fans were not pleased. My hairline was made fun of twice, and boy, if I had any feelings left, they might have gotten hurt. On to bigger and better things. So this is the final installment of our series, Better, Worse, the Same, or We'll See. And we've saved kind of to me, the most important piece for last, and that is the coaching staff. Lots of changes this offseason for the Tigers, on and off the field with staff. We will focus on the on-field staff changes. You have Chris White, who comes in to take over special teams. Jeff Myers comes in to take over the offensive line. Larry Smith comes over to take over wide receivers. Charles Clark is still in charge of defensive backs, but he added the assistant head coach title. And Bryan, talk a little bit about that, because I don't think fans really grasp how important that title kind of is to coaches.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a step in the, I guess, a step up, a progression where they want to go. I mean, Coach Clark wants to be a head coach. He needs, how do you gain some experience? Kind of like, I mean, if you, in the real world, let's say I'm working a movie theater, assistant manager, but before you can get to that head job, you need to be an assistant, to the assistant regional manager, but basically, there's my little office reference. But no, in all seriousness, for the assistant head coach, let's say, Silverfield, he can now trust Clark to run some meetings or do some other stuff that a head coach would normally do. And that gives Clark some more responsibility, and it shows, to other staffs who may be interested in him in the future. Obviously, they'll take a look to see if he can handle it. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, a lot of coaches, they love that.
I'm always interested in that sort of thing, and if, and Larry, you played, so you know this better than we do, but I don't know that players really care if you were the defensive back coach last year and now you're the quote assistant head coach. Does that ever enter into a player's mind? Like, is it really like, we see it all the time in basketball. and we've seen it here at Memphis, where the assistant coach moves into the big chair and the whole dynamic changes. So does that extra responsibility, do the players kind of sense that? And does he maybe go from being good cop and friend dad to now he's got more responsibility, so he's got to be bad cop?
Not on the field. That is more of an off the field thing, like you said, John. So he would be doing stuff with the touchdown club or Highland 100. And so that means more administratively what he does with the other coaches. For example, he may organize the other coaches' meetings that Ryan can't go to or doesn't go to. So he may get the offensive coordinator and defense coordinator together, and he may be one thing I know that the assistant head coach is responsible for is getting the game plans together. And so our assistant head coach was also our defensive coordinator. So his job was to get the game plan together by Monday night. Monday was a day off. And so you just go in and get treatment or whatever. And the assistant head coach, his job was to get everybody in the room and get the game plans together. So from a player standpoint, no. But from a coach's standpoint and from seeing how the coaches, what his job are with the other coaches, it does change his dynamic with the other coaches.
Interesting. All right, so we will start on the offensive side of the football because, I mean, that's, kind of where Memphis has kind of hung their hat the last few years. You have Tim Cramsey coming back. You have a new wide receiver coach, Larry Smith, comes over from UAB. Jeff Myers replaces Jim Bridge. Brad Salem still in his role as the tight ends. Sean Dawkins running backs. So, Bryan, we'll start with you. Is the Memphis offensive staff better, worse, the same, or a solid? We'll see.
To me, I'm going to say better because I mean it couldn't get much worse with some of the positions like wide receiver. I mean the amount of drop balls that you've had the past 2 years is just that's normally not what you see out of a Memphis wide receiver. The offensive line has not been the same since Silverfield was the offensive line coach. Special teams has not been the same. So with these changes, I'm going to say better because I just don't see how it can get worse. Now, the coach that I'm super excited to see is Coach Smith. I mean, when you watch film of the receivers at UAB, the route running, the pay attention to details, the blocking downfield. I mean, I think the energy that he brings, he's going to bring that to the wide receiver room, and I'm really, really excited to see the Memphis wide receivers take the next step or just take a step, in the right direction. So to me, it's a solid. It's going to be better.
Yeah, I'm excited about the wide receiver room too, because one thing, if you go back and we'll actually do this some this summer, go back and watch some tape, like you said, of the UAB receivers, like, man, they could get separation, which is something Memphis really struggled. Like to me, I know, Bryan, you talk about the drop balls all the time, but for me, it was the inability to separate, the inability to get space, which causes drop balls. If you are stumbling and can't get space and can't get loose, then you're having you get your head around late or whatever. So I'm really interested to see that. Also interested, I want to see Tim Cramsey kind of get more comfortable and maybe get a little more variety in the game, because he got kind of predictable at times. And Larry, I'm sure all coaches do it, but it just seemed to me like Tim Cramsey had about 10 plays that he loved, about 30 that he liked, and we tended sometimes to lean on those 10 a little too much.
Well, and the variety of the plays that he thought our team could run successfully began to shrink as the season went down. I think that was the problem. One of the issues you mentioned, separation. I mean, he really only trusted about 3 wide receivers last year, and one of those was a tight end, to be honest with you. So, look, the reality is, I want to see Cramsey sort of put his stamp on this offense, get what he likes, and run it. I think one of the things that we saw at the end of the year against SMU and then also against Utah State was he really sort of found the kind of running game that he likes. I'm not sure that we really, and I'll tell you, I think a game when that actually happened was the North Alabama game when he started running those little trap plays on the outside. And then the next week, we had a lot of success against SMU. We should have won that game. But if you look back at those games, like he started running that little trap play on the outside, and we ran it several times against Utah State, including that last touchdown. So he needs to put his stamp. And you're right, John, exactly right. He's got to find more than 10 plays that he's comfortable with. Well, that's not really true. You can run the same 10 plays, but you've got to run them out of different sets. He's got to find different sets. We didn't do any motion last year. We didn't really change our sets. We would run basically out of the pistol every time. And you guys know that. We talked about that. So to me, one of the things I want to see him do is either run those same 10 plays out of a different formations so that it gives the defense a different look, or find different plays and sort of change the eye level of the defense.
You know, Brian, as you look down the rest of the staff, you know, Brad Salem, he's been here a while now, so he's kind of the if I'm looking here, I think he would be, he's kind of the senior member of that offensive. So who is maybe, other than wide receiver, you've already mentioned him, who's maybe another coach that you're really kind of interested to see how they develop their position in the offense?
Well, you know, I'm going to take a look at Jeff Myers, the offensive line, because to me, Silverfield, you know, I haven't been covering Memphis that long, so I don't go way back, but I go back to roughly 2006, I think is when I started covering Memphis. But since then, to me, Silverfield's been the best offensive line coach I've seen at Memphis. And he needs, I mean, his offensive lines have been the best offensive lines, in my opinion, that Memphis has seen in quite some time. Probably since back when, let's see, 90s had some good offensive lines. When I go back and take a look at the stats and read some old articles. But Myers, when you take a look at him, he played offensive line. I think at Toledo. I think he played 38 games for them. He was an offense. He's been as an offensive line coach. I think at Iowa State since 2018. When you take a look at some of those Iowa State lines, I mean they've been pretty good. I mean there's ups and downs, but still, you got to love the way they moved the line, because you had Brees Hall and David Montgomery, I think, was the two running backs from Iowa State. So I want to see how he can mold this offensive line, because this offensive line, I mean, you got some big boys. I mean, we've talked about it before. I think 4 out of the 5 projected starters next year are going to be 6'3", 2, and then 300 pounds or more. So I mean, it's this offensive line. The talent's there. You know, can he hone it in, and can he get this offensive line what it was back when Silverfield was the offensive line coach? I mean, because I think wide receivers is set. They have a great coach. You know, he's going to improve. I really want to see, you know, what Myers can do with this offensive line, because it's a pivotal year. I mean, to have, you know, the special teams as well. The special teams, offensive line, and wide receivers, 3 areas that underperformed the past couple of years. You know, to have such a pivotal year, and all 3 coaches, I mean, have all 3 units have new coaches in this year. I mean, it all has to, you know, be right for Memphis. It has to gel right off the bat. You can't afford another subpar season.
Yeah, you can't have a slow. It brings up a great point. We kind of touched on it earlier. Maybe that's one of the reasons for the associate head coach with Charles Clark, is now that'll free Coach Silverfield up time to spend with his O-line. You know, I know Ryan was a pretty good O-line coach, but I really feel like that's probably one position. Your 2 lines, your O-line and your D-line, and we'll talk about them in a second. that's probably two position coaches where it's almost a must that you played that position, because it's a totally it's totally different, I think, than any of the others. Because you can kind of learn what a tight end does or what a wide receiver does, but man, if you it and usually your offensive line coaches, and I haven't met Coach Myers yet, but they're usually a weird bunch. They're usually pretty eccentric, pretty outgoing, pretty physical. They're rah guys typically. So I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see kind of how the staff.
O-line coach or likes to fight guy. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, I think one of the complaints about the Memphis staff has been there are times when it seems like there's no energy and no urgency. Although I will dispute that, having sat next to them in the box SMU Stadium twice, sitting on the other side of the glass from them, I would dispute that supposed lack of energy. So moving over to the defensive side of the ball, I can't repeat some of the things I've heard there. They made up some words.
And you'll learn stuff like you didn't know.
So moving to the defensive side of the ball, Larry, we've got some symmetry here. You've got Matt Barnes coming back for his second year, Charles Clark coming back, Jordan Hankins is still here, Kyle Pope, who was highly sought after this offseason, is still here. And as a defensive guy, especially, I know that has to me and comfort level with play calling and just the voices in the room.
Well, and also, let me be very clear. To me, Matt Barnes was they don't like to be compared, but if you look at the job that Cramsey did versus Matt Barnes, I think Matt Barnes did a better job improving the defense than Cramsey did improving the offense. And you could see flow. You saw the run game. The run defense was amazing last year. We talked about that last week. And the pass defense got a lot better. But the one thing that I saw as the season moved on was that he got really comfortable with the players that he had on the field. And he understood how to move them and put in positions to be successful. To me, I thought that Matt Barnes' coaching job last year was the best coaching job of any of our coaches last year. And Kyle Pope, keeping Kyle Pope. This is a season where defense, we didn't have to make a splash hire. Keep the guys you had, right? Keep the guys you had. That was a win right there. So the answer is, are we better? We are better. And here's why. A, we have symmetry, as you put it. We have cohesion. And more than that, Matt Barnes has got his hold on what that defense is going to look like. My suspicion is that you'll see a defense. We talked about this last week. My suspicion is that by the end of this year, Memphis defense could be playing as well as it has probably since that 2019 season. And I mean that. They are that. Kyle Pope may be the best D-line coach we've had at Memphis. I don't know, guys. You guys are going to have to Jeb, help me out here. But it's been a long time. He is really, really good. And if you look at how he had those players playing at the end of the year, I mean, there were times when they were almost unblockable up front. So to me, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the defense, to me, the defensive coaching staff, even though we didn't have any changes, is better.
All right, Brian. So I think we are probably all in agreement here on the fact that the defensive side of the ball is better. I don't think people realize how close we were to losing a couple of our coaches this year. I know Kyle Pope got a lot of looks. I think Charles Clark got several looks as well. But boy, what a boon for Coach Silverfield to be able to keep his full defensive staff intact and kind of move Jordan Hankins up, who was a guy that we talked about. Was that a guy that might get a little impatient and go take another job somewhere if he didn't get the special teams job or whatever? But he got a title. He's the assistant special teams coordinator. So we were close to kind of having to do this all over again on the defensive side of the ball this year.
Yeah, no, big get to keep the defensive staff together because past 2 years, Coach Clark and Coach Pope had offers to go elsewhere, and they chose to stay. And I mean, Coach Barnes, we like Larry said. I mean, we talked last week. What a phenomenal job that he did with the run defense. Now, I mean, pass defense improved 20, 20 so points, maybe in the teens, but still 89th. So I mean, there's still some work to do. But you take the improvement that Memphis had last year, and if you take the same type of improvement going into this season, man, this defense could be really, really special. I mean, we talked about last week, the only question mark really is the secondary. I mean, but if you get the players are there, they just have to perform, and having the same coaches there again, the familiarity. I mean, that's a big, huge boost for Memphis. So I mean, I'm excited about everything on the defense because I think this defense can be special.
And defenses are always ahead of offenses, especially when you come out of spring and head into fall camp. Your defense is going to be ahead of your offense. One more area I kind of want to touch on here. We kind of got an abbreviated show tonight. Is I have gone on and off the record saying that the next big movement in college football is going to be the general manager because of transfer portal and because of signing day and just so many moving pieces now. They've got a DFO. They added a director of recruiting operations, an assistant director of player personnel, and they've really kind of bumped that up. A director of player relations, like they've really bumped up the support staff, which is what you see schools, the bigger schools, the P5 schools. That's one of the reasons Alabama, LSU, and those schools are so good. They've got that great off-field support staff that makes sure guys are getting fed. We're talking about nutrition, having a director of football nutrition. You're not sharing a nutrition director because the nutrition for football and baseball and basketball are three kind of different things. Same thing with the trainers and the strength and conditioning coach. That was a big deal when Josh was here. Is Frank running guys in the ground? Because it's different types of conditioning. It's not the same conditioning for a football player. That's why I think the NFL Combine is one of the most stupid things ever, because I don't need to see guys running in their underwear. I can watch tape and watch what they do with a football in their hand or in pads. And I think that is something that affects recruiting maybe even more than on-field coaches, is having that support staff that can kind of keep recruiting organized, because you can't just go out and offer 100 kids.
Well, and yes, and more importantly, well, I should say more important, but just as important is keeping a track of your own players. Like because a coach, when I say keep track of them, I'm not talking about following around. I'm talking about keeping track of, a kid. Is he on course for graduation, and making sure he's eligible, and then if a kid does start to fall behind, you're helping him out. Or and now with all the movement, you've got kids coming in, and where are they academically from their the transfers? Because people say you just transfer in. Well, let me tell you something. Transferring grades in is not easy. It takes a minute to get all that done. So and yeah, they'll do that, but I'm just saying, like, you got to keep up with all of that, and somebody has to do it. And we talked about player personnel and general managers and things like that. Keeping up with who's actually Brian. It's a full-time job just keeping up with who's on the roster, right? I mean, literally, like who's on the who entered the transfer portal last week, right? And so it's really hard, and you got to keep up and make sure that these guys are going to class, that they are getting to the trainer, it's not as simple as it used to be. I mean, we all kind of policed each other back in the day, but you have to understand that's a guy I've known since we were freshmen, right? I mean, we came in together as freshmen, so we kind of policed each other back then. Now you got a guy that you met last week. And so it's different, right? Somebody has to make sure all that goes on. So there's a lot more to just player relations. And you're right, John, recruiting, getting the right guys in, recruiting portal guys as well as high school guys, right? Now you're recruiting kids that are being in the portal, right? I mean, Bryan, it's a full-time job, right?
Oh, it
Recruiting's
is.
not just
Yep.
seasonal anymore, right? It's
No,
full-time.
it's full time, and I think about the staffs, how much football staffs have changed. I mean, you take a look at Norvell's last year was at 2019. He had one strength guy from if I'm looking at the Go Tigers Go when I take a look at the staff at 2019, one strength guy, and then Silverfield's going to have five strength, as a staff, strength and conditioning staff this year. I mean, overall, I think he had Norvell had roughly 20, personnel that was around, with director, player personnel, things like that. And quick math here, I counted 29 that that Silverfield has. Just the amount of it's more. I guess it's becoming more professionalized because in the NFL you have the strength coach, the director, player personnel, a GM, things like that. It's trickling down to the college level, so it's really college sports. So what we've seen, I think it's going to be more professionalized. The mindset and the way you handle a college, it's going to be more of a organization now.
Guys, we've kind of beat it to death, but the other factor here is NIL and making sure that everybody's on board and on the same, because the school still can't help. But I mean, they've got to have somebody that manages that stuff, right? Like that manages and knows what's going on with Open Doors and knows what's going on with the 901 Fund and Bluff City NIL, frankly, and all the different sources for revenue for the players, for name, image, and likeness for the players. And it's not easy for basketball, but you're dealing with 13 people. Memphis will have well north, when you count walk-ons, will have well north of 100 kids on a roster this year. I forget what you can. I think at home it doesn't matter, but it's like I forget what the number is on the road that can travel. But like, so you're managing. You're managing that process for 5 and 6 times what the basketball staff has to do, and what the baseball staff has to do, and what softball has. Like, I don't think people realize. That's why last year or 2 years ago, I forget when COVID, whatever year the Hawaii Bowl was, I can't remember, 21, I think, was supposed to be.
Yes.
You can't, everybody's like, well, just go, we'll just not play in Hawaii and go play here. Well, it's not that easy. You need, well, why can't the team stay another day? Well, you need 50 hotel or 70-ish hotel rooms. You need food for 110 people. You need, you've got the truck, the equipment truck drives. So he's got to have a couple, 3 days to get wherever you're going. So it's not as easy as just picking up and going over here and doing something different. And that's the part I think people don't understand. And that's where having a bigger staff really helps you, is you can kind of spread that work out a little bit, and you're not, oh man, his name escapes me. The former director of player personnel was the busiest person I ever knew at the U of M. Like, he did travel, he did everything for the football team. And now you've got a staff. You can kind of spread that out. So you don't have one or two folks that are doing all the work. So you're more efficient and people can focus on the things they're good at. Because Bryan, you're right. It's becoming professional, and we can bitch and complain about it all we want, but it's not changing. It's never it's out of the bag. It's not going back. We're not going to go back to this play for the name on the front of the jersey and rah for our team and dear old Memphis U. Like, that's not coming back. And this is also the reason that money is so important, and season ticket sales are so important, and TV revenue is so important. This is the reason, because that staff of 29 people isn't working on a volunteer basis. And that's why building your boosters are so important. There's so much that goes into building a football program. And frankly, Memphis has skated by bare bones for a number of years, because I think the most coaches The most staff Justin ever had was 17, 16, 17, it up around 20, and Ryan's got it almost to 30, and I think probably a couple more to be added. Like, I can't remember a time, and maybe I just didn't pay attention. Memphis has 2 offensive quality control coaches, 3 defensive quality control coaches, a special teams quality control coach, 2 offensive DLs, a senior offensive analyst, a senior defensive analyst, and the most important guy on the staff, the research analyst, because he's that guy that Larry was talking about that's tracking numbers and stats and players that are coming in and going out. And there's even a development research assistant. So that's what's changing. College football is maybe not professional, but corporate might be the right word. It's becoming more corporatized, if that's a word.
Well, when we talk about money for assistants, because coaches talk about that, right? I got more money for assistants. That's what they're talking about, is getting more personnel in to free up the coaches to do what they do best, which is coach. Because what people don't realize is that a football coach, and Bryan talked about this on our show when we interviewed him, right? Last summer. He talked about, because I asked him, what's the thing that you weren't, that surprised you the most? He's like, all the other stuff I had to do that didn't involve coaching, right? And that's, look, public relations is part of the job, and everybody knows that. But on an assistant level, how much you have to do with, equipment. Okay. People don't realize that. Like, some coaches, are work on the equipment staff. Like, how do we get, a helmet that's a little lighter, or so, all of those things. Like, there's just all that stuff. Uniforms. Oh my God. You cannot imagine how much time that coaches spend on uniform combinations, because that's important to kids. It's important to the fans. It's important. So stuff like that. And if you got somebody that helps you with that or does that, that leaves you more time to do the other things, right? And recruiting, right? Recruiting is a big deal. So if you're not worried about equipment, you can worry about recruiting and stuff like that. So John, you're hitting the nail on the head. And this is why we talk about money for the program. I mean, one of the things with the Memphis program we've seen is a lot more. No, Jeb, you cannot be in charge of the uniforms. But what I'm saying is that those guys, now that you've got them and having that staff, that allows them to do the other things that we really, that affects the on-field product, right? And that's what we really want them to do.
Yeah, that's a really good summary, and I think that's what the, it's the what's the corporate, to steal that again, the adage of, you see the duck above water and he's just gracefully kind of, rolling along, and underneath water, buddy, those feet are paddling 150 miles an hour. Feathers are flapping, like he's doing everything he can to stay, just to stay afloat. And that's kind of how football works. So that wraps up tonight's show, and also wraps up kind of this good, better, best series. What we're going to do in the coming weeks is we're going to kind of dive into the positions and, look at the individual players that are coming back and the new players coming in by position, and we'll kind of go through all the positions, and really hone not only the existing kids, but the new kids coming in, and we may even get into some film and things like that, especially when we get into the running backs and the wide receivers. So that's going to do it for tonight, gentlemen. Bryan, any final thoughts?
No, I'm just I'm ready to get going. It's just, I'm ready for the off season to be over. I want spring to be here, and then then we'll get tired of summer. And I was like, I just want fall to be here tomorrow. Wouldn't that be nice?
No, I want to go through summer first. And I like Bryan says, though, I am excited about the season. I'm looking forward to the season because, look, everybody goes, this is a make or break year, and I there is nothing better than, look, football is pressured. If you don't like pressure, don't get into it. there's nothing better than watching how is somebody going to perform under pressure. And to me, you guys, we've talked about this like off air, and we'll talk about it. Ryan's been a breath of fresh air since basically the bowl, right? I mean, just sort of a side of him we haven't seen. He's been tight and buttoned up, and now he's just sort of free and going around it, right? I mean, would that not be an accurate description? I mean, and
Very
I'm
accurate.
really, yeah, I'm excited. Like this hopefully he's found the person that I've always said before this, he was a guy who's pretending like how he thought coaches should act. And now he's just being Ryan. And that's what we need. And hopefully that's exactly what the team needs. So we'll see. It's the old Greg Maddux, throw it up there and see if you're good enough. So I think that's what Ryan's doing. I'm going to throw it out there and see what I can do.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. We'll be back next week with another. It's going to take me a little bit to get used to this going all year round, but I'm excited because we can cover a lot more ground this summer. We will have our Why I Coach stuff back this summer, have all the same things we've always had, just at a new home. So don't forget to go over and check out bluffcitymedia.co/join and join for a year. It's $80 for a year. You get all kinds of cool stuff, access to our Discord, which if you are not an insider, you're missing entertainment in the chat, especially during games. We kind of get after it a little bit, and we had a lengthy. I'm going to have to school the Tigers Untapped guys over there, TJ and Trey, about this whole boneless wing fiasco. I can't believe in 2023 we still haven't uncovered the fact that boneless wings are nuggets. They're not wings.
They are chicken strips. It is a glorified freaking chicken strip. We can it's not a wing. And look, people will tell you that I eat so many wings they think I'm gonna grow feathers. It is not a wing. Sorry, it is not. And again, join the Discord. Please join and fight the good fight with me.
And we have a Discord. For those who don't know what Discord is, it's kind of a real-time chat, kind of like if you had a group chat, if you had a group text, only much better and much more involved. We have a channel for 901 FC who kicks off this weekend. We have a channel, and allegedly they're going to, because they have something resembling grass at AutoZone Park now. We've got one, of course, for the Grizzlies, for the NBA draft, for the Tigers, the Showboats. We've got everything covered over there, and you can come in and talk about the things that you like to talk about with those of us that work at Bluff City Media and your fellow fans. So that's going to do it for this week. We will be back next week. We'll break into kind of some positions as we move into the summer. Thanks a lot for tuning in and watching Tigers Tonight.